Good evening. It's a big 6 o'clock. Let me welcome everyone. This is Richland County Council meeting for November 17th. Let me go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let me ask Ms. Only to call the roll for attendance reference council members.
Sir, Malinowski.
Present.
Dickerson.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Terracio.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Kennedy.
I short name, but I use my right.
Manning.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Newton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the next items on our agenda, the invocation and pledge of allegiance. I'll ask the Honorable Delia Myers to provide invocation and lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you're interested in bowing your head, if you would, please bow your head. God, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful for this opportunity to serve. We're grateful for everyone who has joined on this call. And please, during these times, keep our families, friends, loved ones, all of us safe. Remind us that we are our brother's keeper. We thank you for your blessings toward us. And we love giving you and giving all of the citizens of Richland County the service that this opportunity provides. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. If you would, thank you. If you would cross your right hand over your heart, if you're so inclined to join the pledge. On 3, 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chair, you have your meeting.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
That brings us to presentations. I know it's not listed on some of your earlier agendas, but that presentation, if I'm correct, Ms. Only, is from Ingenuity.
Yes, sir. It's from Ingenuity SC, the Midlands Regional Competitive Report.
And who's going to be giving that? I think
Will.
Will,
On the line.
Will, you on the line?
I am.
Okay, you may go ahead with your presentation.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you, Paul, and thank you to all the council members for allowing me to join y'all this evening. I'm pleased to join you to present and discuss the Midlands Regional Competitiveness Report, the most recent edition thereof being the 2019-2020 Competitiveness Report. So as you all know, Ingenuity SC is a nonprofit organization governed by the highest ranking regional leaders in education, government, business. We're fortunate to have both Councilman Livingston and Councilwoman Newton serving on our board. We work to make the Columbia SC region a top choice for talent and for competitive companies. So the way we work as an organization, we are a neutral and independent project management team. We work behind the scenes primarily. We're not the ones who are out in front. We work behind the scenes to create a community that is an awesome place to live, learn, work, play, and visit. So the best possible Columbia SC community that we can be. So you should all have the slides from which I'm presenting in your packet today. If you have any questions at any point, please feel free to stop me and ask away. Otherwise, I'll just keep rolling and I can answer any questions at the end. So basically, Ingenuity SC, what is our vision? What do we see for this region? Our vision is that by 2030, this metropolitan area, the Columbia MSA, is going to be one of the Southeast's most competitive and most prosperous metropolitan areas. The way we're going to measure that is with this competitiveness report. We publish it every year. We see this region having the potential to be in the top 3 or better in every single index in this report when we compare it to our peers. So moving to slides 4 and 5 here, just a brief note of thanks to the organizations that make this possible. This is a true public-private partnership supported by both local governments, educational institutions, and with generous support from the private sector that makes our work possible. So moving on to the next slide, we've got, again, this is a 2019-2020 competitiveness report. This is one, and we've actually had a few folks ask, is this actually Columbia on the front? And the answer is, of course, yes, this is Columbia. This is the region in which we live, spanning 6 counties, all the way from Saluda County in the far west, all the way to Kershaw County in the east and Calhoun County in the south, with Lexington and Richland counties and Fairfield County smack in the middle. So big region. We're talking a region of ultimately over 830,000 people. Maybe hard to believe, but this region is closing in not so slowly on 1 million people. And as we look at that region as a whole, we measure our competitiveness across 5 different indicators. Those are talent, innovative capacity, entrepreneurial and business environment, industry cluster, and livability. Those 5 areas of competitiveness all work hand in hand. So success in one does not guarantee the others, but they all must be working in concert to be successful as a region. And again, going down to the next slide, you'll see the map there of the Columbia MSA. This is a region of 6 counties, population 832,000 as of the most recent estimates when this was released, now closer to 840,000. And that region competes against quite a few. But when you look at our peers and our aspirant communities across the Southeast, you're looking at places like the Greenville MSA, like Raleigh, North Carolina, like Charleston. You're looking at places that are comparable in size, scope, and economic background. A lot of them have major research universities, just like we are lucky to have here. So in the big picture, going down, you'll see where it says the big picture there, you'll see the graphs. By and large, this metropolitan area has tracked with those peers over the last decade plus. At times, we've outperformed. You'll see 2011, 2012 in particular, this region showed more stability economically coming out of the recession than did some of our peers. But the same factors that lead to that stability in times of natural recession, and I'll talk about that natural recession part when we get to the end a little bit, it means that it doesn't tend to be as dynamic in the best periods, in periods of strong economic growth. So we'll talk a little bit about why that might be as we go through here. But this should help to give you a little context. We're essentially competing on a level playing field with a lot of these places. Now what matters is what we do to put ourselves ahead of the pack in that playing field. So I'm going to dive right into the first of our 5 indices here, and that's talent. So again, talent, we define it not just as the people that are already here, but it also means the people that are coming into this region. the people that are coming to school here, the people that are moving here for a job, they're moving here because it's an awesome place to live. It's our region's ability to attract, develop, and maintain, all of those three being really important, a vibrant and skilled workforce. You'll see here, yes, we rank lower than our peers here. You'll also see on this index that all of our peers are grouped extremely closely together. So we see year over year substantial variation between where we land, and if of just a couple points in any given direction means that you're looking at a big move in the rankings. So we were at 84. We compare everything, of course, on a index basis where 100 is national average. So for example, 116 for Raleigh over there means that they're doing 16% better than national average. So some of the areas where we're seeing success here, first of all, we've got a lot of knowledge-based workers here. You look at the university, you look at governmental employment, you look at some of the major companies and law firms and banks that are present here. They employ a lot of people in the management and STEM and the legal occupations. And those, of course, tend to pay higher. But when you look at some of these other metrics, we don't do as well when you look at the productivity and the quality of jobs across the board for this region. You see a region that is somewhat stratified. You see a sector at the very top of the economic sphere where you see jobs that are very good jobs, high paying, competitive with anywhere in the world. But when you get it down below that top tier jobs, our salaries aren't quite as high as they would see at other places in the US, and even compared to our peers, they're not as high. We're not producing as many STEM degrees, and we'll see how that shows up when we get to innovation here in a second. But we're competitive in areas like educational attainment, where we have strong performance both in bachelor degrees and in graduate degrees. So the ingredients are there. It's a matter of the mix of jobs that are present in this region, which brings in a lot of factors in the long run related to the economic development and community development spheres. So you'll see as we go through here, we like to highlight things that we believe, first, that you can share.
Excuse me 1 minute. Will, can you hold for a minute? I'm not sure how long you were told your presentation would be, but I may have to ask you to try to highlight the main points of each category so it won't take up too much time since we got a long agenda tonight.
Absolutely, Councilman Livingston. I'll try to keep it very quick. So talent, we're competitive, but there's more that can be done there. Innovative capacity, again, in the same vein, we're competitive, but we don't perform as well. Primary reason here is that we don't have necessarily the private sector investment in R&D as other regions. President Caslin's tenure at the University of South Carolina hopefully has some promise to bring in additional Department of Defense funding in areas. So it's just the ones that you'll see there: analytics, aerospace, things like that. Entrepreneurial and business environment. You're looking at an area that does small business really well. Looking actually ahead to the report that's going to be released in January, we continue to do well as a region that grows small businesses and that maintains small businesses. We've actually seen more small businesses open here than Charleston or Greenville did over a comparable time period. I think that's something to highlight there. Moving down to industry clusters, this is an area where you see the direct result of long-term economic development strategies. And I would just like to commend the work that Richland County's Economic Development Office, Jeff Rubel and his team, and the members of council who are supporting that work as the work that they're doing right now to advance economic development strategy is going to pay off in the long run through more investment, better jobs, and a better community as a whole. So very excited to see that. One thing I'll highlight here, traded clusters is not something we've done well in. That's where there's a real opportunity. And then finally, livability. This is the one that's fun for everybody, but there's a couple areas to highlight and a couple areas of concern. I'll highlight arts and entertainment. This region is growing faster in the arts and entertainment sphere than anybody we compare ourselves to, and that includes Charleston. Can't stress that enough, how important it is to see that rapid growth there, because that makes a difference for every person who lives here. And then a couple things that I will highlight. There is a bit of a perception gap. People in this region, it's not don't always recognize the livability of the community. And there's other factors that play into there, but there's a bit of a perception gap between the reality on a day-to-day economic basis and what people perceive of the region. So everything from restaurants to local government to school districts, all of that factors in to how people see their community. And that factors in we'll see the Gallup Wellbeing Index in there. We can continue to improve those perceptions as a region by doing so, by purposely promoting this as a place to live, work, play, and visit. Finally, talking a little bit about COVID-19, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up, Councilman Livingston. COVID-19 is going to hit this region about as hard as anybody. One of the things that I will highlight from Dr. Joey Von Nessen, our partner at the Moore School, is that we have the potential to see a slow recovery in this area than do the areas like Charleston, Greenville. And that's because some of those jobs in things like government and education are slower to return once the economy starts to recover. There are a lot of sector jobs. So that's something to be concerned about, but across the board, we're tracking relatively well. We haven't seen the wholesale job losses that some other regions have had that rely more heavily on tourism. So that being said, I will go ahead and conclude my presentation. Councilman Livingston, are there any questions that anybody has?
Yeah, let me first just thank you and Ingenuity for your contribution to our community and your organizational work in our community. It's extremely valuable. Any questions from my colleagues? Comments? If not, Will, let me just, again, thank you so very, very much, and please keep up good work on our behalf and for our region.
Thank you for having me.
That, Ms. Owner, that was the only presentation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That brings us to our next item on our agenda, the approval of minutes. Item 5A, special call meeting for November 10th. You were sent that on a separate cover, so you all should have copies of that. You also would send it email as well. Chair entertain a motion for approval for the special call meeting minutes for November 10th.
Move to approve.
Motion for approval.
I'll second. And Mr. Chair, I do have some
It's a move and proper
two
second.
additions. Discussion.
Mr. Terracio, you recognize.
Thank you. There were two, because I had some audio trouble during that meeting, there were two votes that didn't get counted for me. Let's see. One was, I'll just bring you to the up the page number. So it's page number 16. And I believe I voted in favor on item 17E. And then 17F, I also voted in favor. And those are the only two that seem to have gotten missed.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other changes, deletions, reference to minutes? If not, it's moved in second with those additions. Ms. Only, can you call the roll for the motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers, Newton.
I abstain. I missed those minutes under separate cover, so I didn't have an opportunity to review those.
Motion passes.
McBride, yes.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 7 on your agenda, the report of the attorney, the adoption of the agenda, item 6. Agenda,
Move to
motion for
approve.
adoption of the agenda. Did we get a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion for
I'll
approval for
second.
adoption of the agenda. Is a second.
Second.
Moving proper second for adoption of the agenda. And then I ask staff, are there any changes, deletions?
No, sir, Mr. Chair. This is the county administrator. Give me a moment. I'll turn on my video. We received a late email from Judge Edmonds on today, but the email was sent to the committee chair, Ms. Dickerson. So I don't want to take an inappropriate action, but he did request to have that an item on the agenda that's related to the old antique mall. He would not be able to attend the meeting on today. And so he had asked the chair of that committee, Ms. Dickerson, to consider changing that item from tonight's meeting. But I'm not sure if Ms. Dickerson had a chance to receive his phone call or view his email.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Dixon, do you want to take that up now? Or do you want to take it up when we get to the item on the
I
agenda?
will just take it up when we get to the item because I spoke with them and I also spoke with you regarding that matter. And I think I want to leave it as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion referencing adoption of the agenda? If not, the motion is for adoption of the agenda. Mrs. Only Cover.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
No.
Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion
Newton, yes.
passes.
Thank you. That brings item 7 on the agenda, the report of the county attorney for executive session items, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Livingston and members of council, this was an item that the council actually deferred, I think 2 meetings ago. And we don't have any further information to share with the council. However, if the council has any direction that they want to give to us related to any resolution or settlement of this matter, then we certainly would want to hear that information in executive session and address any questions that the council may have and give the council whatever legal advice we think is appropriate related to any settlement or resolution of this matter.
Thank you. Anything else on your report, Mr. Smith?
No, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Thank you. I have questions about this item that I'd like to ask.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. First, 2 questions for you, Mr. Smith. One question is, in terms of the settlement that we had with Mr. Seals, did that settlement in any way preclude a public hearing? If you're speaking, Mr. Smith, I can't hear you.
Mr. Smith?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Did you hear the question?
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did hear the question. I don't believe the settlement agreement itself directly addressed the question of a public hearing. Obviously, I'm not looking at the substance of the agreement at this point, but that's my recollection. It did not preclude that, no. I think that the agreement was that he would move forward under the terms and conditions of that particular agreement at that time. And of course, the public hearing portion was pending at the time that the council and Mr. Seals reached that agreement, as best as I can recall.
Thanks. And then my second question would be, given where we are with the previous settlement, is Mr. Seals precluded from additional lawsuits against Richland County?
Well, I think that, Ms. Newton, if we're going to talk about potential lawsuits and those kinds of things, my recommendation would be that we discuss those things in executive session.
Noted.
You still have floor.
Yes, I mean that was my question, but I'm prepared to make a motion regarding this item. And what I move is that Richland County, to resolve this matter, that we formally thank Mr. Seals for his service to Richland County, and that we acknowledge that his termination process didn't follow appropriate protocol, and that resulted in an unfair and negative impact on his career and reputation. That we give Mr. Seals a public hearing, which will give our citizens full transparency into the matter that happened with the lawsuit, and allows Mr. Seals to share any information that he would like to share, both with council and our citizens. And finally, that after that public hearing, that we revisit the matter of Mr. Seals' settlement.
I'll second that.
You heard it. You heard the motion, moving proper second in discussion.
Chair, clarification.
Mr. Miles, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In answer to Ms. Newton's question about the settlement and the public hearing, what I had seen was that while Mr. Seals reserved his objection to termination, and the council didn't comply with state law, that he did submit a written request for a public hearing before council. So I would just like to add that in response to that question.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, as the maker of the motion, may I speak to it?
Yes.
So I wasn't here when Mr. Seals was hired or when he was fired, but I do think that the lack of transparency has been a huge issue in terms of how we deal with it. And from my perspective, he has suffered a great harm to his reputation and career simply because he worked for Richland County. And our citizens, at least my constituents that I represent, are very curious to know what happened, why we used our taxpayer dollars to pay him a settlement. And I think that, well, I'm guessing that he would be willing to have a public hearing, and that this is an opportunity for us to clear the air. It gives us then an opportunity to revisit the settlement so that we can move on and put it to bed. But when a private business makes employment mistakes, the private business makes amends, but they do that with their profit. We are a government, and when we're making amends, we're making it with our citizens' dollars, and so they should be involved in that process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Madden, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, could you remind us the process in terms of the council as it was made up at that time, in terms of the separation and what state law says about a county administrator and the county administrator form of council, form of government, the legal process with regard to hearings?
Mr. Manning, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello? Okay, all right. Mr. Manning, again, I'm going to give the same answer that I gave to Ms. Newton. I think that to the extent that you all are asking at this point, the lawyers to give you legal advice about the process or about state law, that legal advice needs to be given in executive session and not in open session. Unless the council wants to waive the attorney-client privilege, and then at that point, we still have to go into executive session so we can advise you of the potential effects of that. And then if you wanted to knowingly waive that right, you certainly have the right to do that.
Yes, sir, Ms. Smith. I think my question was about the process laid out in state law. And I'm not sure that would be an executive session item to what state law says in terms of with the action the council took, that, and even how the state law addresses if a county council in the council administrator form of government decides to discontinue with the contract. I was of the thinking that there was state law that talked about a county administrator, if they wanted a hearing, how that process works per state law in terms of a request for that, time period, a response by county council in terms of time period.
Oh, okay, Mr. Manning, in terms of the process, the process called for the county administrator to request a hearing if he so desired. And in this case, I think that Mr. Malinowski was correct. Mr. Seals did, within the time frame required, request a hearing. And I think that what I said earlier was that was pending at the time that the parties reached a settlement agreement.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I have some questions, but they're more about the legal ramifications of the process, once you do a hearing and so forth. So mine are more legal questions that would require executive session.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Good to be recognized.
I think this, I really am support of, I think Councilwoman Newton has articulated this very well. And I do think we need to have some further discussion. And if it's necessary for us to go into executive session and get legal advice and then come out and vote on this motion that she's put forward, if legal advice is necessary at this time, and that would be if Ms. would agree to let this go into executive session and come out and vote on this item.
Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Is there outside legal counsel present regarding this matter?
Yes, Mr. Linderman should be on the line. And of course, if the council were to go into executive session, it would be during this portion of the agenda under your rules. So Mr. Linderman should be on the line. Andrew, you there?
And I know Ms. Newton has a motion on for in second. I'd like to offer a substitute motion. And that substitute motion is to enter the executive session for discussion of this item.
Mr. Livingston, this is Andrew Lindeman. I just wanted to confirm that I am on the line.
Yeah. So I entertain a motion to go into executive session for discussion of this item.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes. You recognize.
I understand that your motion is to go into executive session. Is it truly a substitute motion? Or is that just because my motion is the one currently on the floor?
It's because yours is currently on the floor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Dick, you recognize?
Ms. Newton, did you hear what I said in order to amend your motion so that you could make that motion? That to address Mr. Livingston's substitute motion?
Point of
I
order.
might have missed.
I don't think I heard.
What you
Did
said,
I get a
Mr.
second to my substitute motion?
I second it.
Okay, thank
Point
you.
of order.
Mr. Walker, you recognize for point of order.
Yeah, I think that your explanation, Ms. Newton, was incorrect, Mr. Chair. I think that as a substitute motion presented subsequent to her motion, if your motion were to pass, then hers would be off the table and not able to be represented post.
That always happens when a substitute motion passes.
Well, then the explanation you just gave Ms. Newton was improper.
Absolutely.
I told her it was a substitute motion.
Mr. Chair, we all heard it very clearly. What you've done is position your substitute motion to take her motion off the table after executive session. So you presenting executive session as a substitute motion, we all see what that is. You explaining it in a way that was opaque at best is inappropriate. Thank you.
Any further discussion about the substitute motion?
Yes, I have a question for our parliamentarian. So, Mr. Smith, my understanding is I had a motion that was on the floor. There's currently a substitute motion that the intent of the executive session would be that we go in, we discuss the original motion that I made, as well as any additional information following any executive session were that to occur. Is there anything that would preclude my motion from being addressed at that time?
No, ma'am. I think that once we have answered any questions that you all have or explained any legal advice that may go along with your question, I think that any of you are free to make any motion that you all want to make coming out of executive session, including the ones that you've already made.
Yes, my
So
motion is going to executive session to discuss this matter. It doesn't matter what anyone want to discuss about it.
So, Ms. Newton, you would not be precluded coming out of executive session from making the same motion that you've made.
Thank you.
Point of clarification. Point of clarification.
You're right. I'm sorry, Ms. Walker. Ahead.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Smith. I want to be very clear on the record about the technicality of what's happening right now. Ms. Newton made a motion. The chair has made a substitute motion, even though that substitute motion is to go into executive session. If the substitute motion were to pass, I want a very clear statement, Mr. Smith, that the original motion, which was defeated by the substitute motion, would still be properly before us if presented on the backside of executive session. Could you please speak directly to that?
Well, let me see whether I can be as clear as I can be. Ms. Newton's motion, which was the original motion, would not be precluded once we come out of the executive session from her making the same motion. And I think that's essentially what I said. I don't think that there is a situation where whatever motion was made during the public session is going to in some way impede her ability to make the same motion once we come out of executive session, or that Mr. Livingston, by asking to go into executive session to discuss this matter, that motion is in any way going to preclude her from making the same motion that she made originally.
And just to be specific, and in support of parliamentary order, the fact that the motion to go into executive session has been presented as a substitute motion, again, does not preclude Mrs. Newton's original motion from being brought back before us, even if the substitute motion passes.
That's correct.
And that's my understanding too.
Once you,
okay, thank you.
So once you come out of executive session, anybody can make any motion that you want, including a motion that's already been made,
Mr. Chair.
once you've been properly advised.
Mr. Mallon, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's any question about this, is there any reason Ms. Newton just doesn't withdraw her original motion? And then after executive session, she can present it. And then there's no question that it was defeated by anything. Mr. Smith?
Is that a question, Mr. Malinowski?
Yes, I'm saying just for the sake of simplicity, if Ms. Newton withdraws her original motion, it's not a motion, regardless of what takes place, or if somebody later on decides we can't do what Mr. Walker is asking about, she now can make the motion because it's the first time it's going to be made.
But yeah, I think that you can do that. Or I thought I heard Ms. Dickerson simply asked Ms. Newton to amend her motion and add going into executive session. I thought that's what I heard her say.
Yeah.
So I think that either one of those things would be appropriate if there's some concern about the effect of Mr. Livingston's motion. And I think that Ms. Dickerson had, I think, made that statement and asked Ms. Newton whether or not she would amend her motion to include the executive session. At least that's what I thought she said.
And I said, and I think restate the motion when we come out, if we went into executive session. I mean,
Right.
I want her motion to be carried. I don't care before or after executive session, but I do think it needs to be addressed.
For the sake of simplicity, I felt like I heard very clear guidance that my motion could be made again, but I will withdraw my motion because while it is absolutely within our legal right to go into executive session to discuss this, that is not something that I personally support. And so I don't want to be in a position to have to vote against my own motion. So I withdraw my motion.
Before you, Ms. Newton, also keep in mind too now, we haven't, and the reason why my motion is substitute motion is because we haven't voted on that motion yet. We don't know whether the motion going to pass or fail. If it passes, we go to executive session. If it fails, your motion is still on the floor.
Fine. Again, I feel that I've heard very clearly from our attorney that I would be able to make this motion again, whether or not there was executive session. So I'm fine if we want to proceed along the lines that we were on, which is with the substitute motion, which is properly before us. Actually, you know what? Forget it. I withdraw my motion. I just
okay, the motion withdrawn. So now what's on the floor is the motion to go into executive session. Any further discussion about the motion to go into executive session? And that motion to go into executive session regarding receipt of legal advice, potential resolution, settlement of contractual personnel matter involving former Administrator Gerald Seals. And remember, after council returns from the session, council can take action on any item, including any subsection of in a section of this item. So that's the motion. Ms. Owen can call the vote for the motion to go into executive session.
Malinowski,
No.
Dickerson,
No.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
No.
Walker,
No.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay. Now, any other motions regarding this item?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we formally thank Mr. Seals for his service to Richland County and acknowledge that his termination process did not follow proper procedures and protocols, and that resulted in an unfair negative impact on his career and his reputation. That we give Mr. Seals an opportunity to provide full transparency to our citizens in a public hearing, and that following the public hearing, we revisit the matter of Mr. Seals' settlement.
And I'll second it again.
It's moved and properly second. Any discussion reference that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Manning and then Ms. McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Smith, my question to you would be, when we're talking about providing a hearing, do we need to identify, am I to assume that that hearing would be the hearing as is prescribed by state law with regard to this process? Or would this be some other hearing, and per council rules, where and how would that hearing be conducted?
Mr. Manning, that would be the hearing that Mr. Seals was entitled to under state law. And as I stated earlier, he had actually made the request within the time frame for the hearing, and that hearing was actually pending at the time that the settlement agreement was reached. And so there would be, if this motion passes, there would have to be a date and time set for Mr. Seals to have that hearing, and that would be at the discretion of the council.
Okay, so it would be the hearing as prescribed by the state law in the original process.
Yes, sir.
All right, and then if we're backing up to that point, would that have all aspects of the agreement that was at one time agreed to and signed off with everybody null and void and back to the beginning? In order for that hearing to proceed, would we have to bring everything back to where we were in the process at that time?
Well, where you are, Mr. Manning, is because of the court's action, the court has voided the agreement. So there is no agreement at this point, or it voided the votes which implemented the agreement. So there is no agreement at this point. And then, so that brings us back to where we were before the agreement was reached, which was Mr. Seals had asked for a hearing. So as I heard Ms. Newton's motion, if it passes, Mr. Seals' hearing would be set for a certain date and time. And then after that hearing, according to the motion that was made, the council presumably would address the issues related to any settlement of this matter.
Okay, has the county retrieved the money from that agreement that's no longer in place?
There has been no exchange of funds, Mr. Manning.
All right, and you said prior to us having a vote on executive session, the council would have to forego. Explain again what council would need to forego for us to have your legal advice publicly about the ramifications to the county long-term moving forward with the motion that's on the floor.
So, so what I said was that first of all, we are bound by certain rules of professional responsibility in terms of what lawyers can and cannot do, or should not do. And one of the things is we can't, as lawyers, break attorney-client privilege, and only the counsel has the authority to decide that you want to waive or break attorney-client privilege. However, before you did that, what I said was, as your lawyers, we have a responsibility to tell you what the potential ramifications are of your waiving or breaking attorney-client privilege. And in order to tell you that, that would be in the form of legal advice, which would require us to go into executive session and share with you. And then if you all wanted to come out and say, we've been told, and despite the fact that we've been told we're going to waive or break attorney-client privilege, then, that would be up to the council. But we can't do that.
Okay, understood. So that I'm clear on this then, because we've not gone into executive session, we cannot get legal advice in order to have that legal advice related to this motion.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride, you recognize.
I think Mr. Manning addressed some of my questions, but I do have another one. We have by law, Mr. Smith, Mr. Sears could request a hearing. He's not mandated to have a hearing, is he? That's a question.
The law gives him the right to have a hearing, and it's his right to exercise that opportunity or not.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, based on the motion that is before us, Mr. Sears does not have to accept or want to have a hearing. Is that not?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, he could, as I understood the motion, it was in the form of an offer, I think. And so he can either accept or reject that offer, or, he could come back with a counter offer. I mean, there are a lot of scenarios here in terms of what he could do. Yeah.
Okay. So if he rejects that offer, then where would we be in the process?
Well, I mean, we still be where we are right now with having to figure out a resolution to this matter.
So currently, we'll be right back where we are now, in which what we're trying to do now is to determine, working with Mr. Sears, whether he wants a hearing or the procedures that we need to take. So this is just another almost unnecessary step that we're trying to resolve now in terms of as our legal advisor that you're working on now.
Well, yeah, in terms of the steps that we're taking at this point, I think that what we were simply trying to do with counsel is get some direction from counsel about what type of offer you all wanted us to take back to Mr. Seals. And you all have, at least there's a motion which presumably does that. And of course, how that offer will be received or not received by Mr. Seals, obviously we don't know. And where that will leave us, we really don't know until such time as if the motion passes and we take the offer to him and have him respond to it.
Okay, because I was thinking that you were already developing, you and the other attorneys, developing a procedure, a process, and working with Mr. Sears to bring back to us.
Well, no, I think that what we reported the last time, Ms. McBride, was that Mr. Seals and his attorney had agreed that they would join us on the motion with the court to reconsider.
Right.
And I think that's what we reported. However, in terms of any other thing coming or any other information coming from them regarding this matter, there was no additional information.
Okay. So now, in terms of your work, our attorney's work with Mr. Sears regarding consideration, is that null and void based on the motion, if the motion before us passed?
Well, no, I mean, because the motion regarding the reconsideration has already been filed. We're just waiting on a response from the judge.
Okay.
So we've already carried out the earlier motion.
Okay, that's why I'm not seeing the need for this motion. So thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion after the motion on the floor? If not, Ms. Owen can call the roll for the motion by Mrs. Newton.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson, McBride,
I'm gonna abstain because I think it's a conflict with the legal advice being given to us.
Livingston,
No.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
I'll abstain for the same reasons Councilwoman McBride. Without legal advice, I don't think it's prudent to vote on this motion. So I'll abstain.
Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair,
Mr. Walker, you recognize.
I move to reconsider.
Motion for reconsideration, that's second.
Very good.
Second.
I'll second it.
It's the move and properly second. Mrs. Owen can call the roll for motion for reconsideration.
Malinowski,
No.
Dickerson,
No.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
No.
Walker,
No.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 8. First, Mr. Smith, that completes your report.
Yes, sir. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 8 on your agenda, citizen input. There's only for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. Did anyone sign up to speak for that citizen input?
No, sir.
That citizen input is open, not closed. Item 9, citizen input must pertain to county matters not on the agenda, items for which a public hearing is required or a public hearing has been scheduled and cannot be addressed. Those cannot be addressed at this time. Did anyone sign up to speak to the second public hearing? Citizen input
Yes.
section.
No, sir.
That citizen input section is now closed, open and closed. That brings to item 10, report of the county administrator. Mr. Brown, you recognize.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of council. In your packet, you have my report, and the item that I'll start with is listed as COVID-19 statistical data under that coronavirus update. And specifically, what you have in there is related to Richland County and how we look in terms of the outlook on COVID-19. So If you look on page 10, or if you looked at page 10 already, you will see that the percent positive in Richland County over the course of time that data was being collected is roughly about 17.1% as of the last time of this report. And while overall Richland County has again gone down from the upper 20s, I will point out, if you look also on page 11, you will see that since our last report out, that the percent positive is 13.7%, whereas we had been going down from a 2-week period to a roughly around 11.1 or around 11.5%. So I bring that to your attention because there has been a spike in COVID-19 cases over the past few weeks. Hopefully that will die down, but currently we are seeing some spikes on certain days within Richland County. On page 12 of your agenda packet, again, you just have a overall look of the cases for the past 2 weeks. And then on page 13 of the statistical data that I provided, you see the number of hospitalizations that are listed. You also see in that diagram that at the time that the hospitalizations were reported, that only about 7% require a stay as compared to the larger percentage that is released. And then on your next page, you will have the number of deaths in Richland County, which at the time of this report was 282 that are being communicated as COVID-related deaths. And then on page 15, again, you have an overall picture, again, of Richland County in a snapshot, the number of tests, number of cases, hospitalizations, and the number of deaths. So that's the statistical data specific to Richland County. And again, I would just point out, overall, our numbers our percent positive has slightly gone down, but in the last few weeks, we have seen an uptick as noted on the data. In relation to Richland County's response to COVID-19, the county has participated in several mass giveaway events and throughout the entirety of the county. And I want to highlight a few that are currently scheduled to take place. In District 10, we have scheduled on November 20th, which is going to be this Friday, at Temple of Faith Bible Way Church. If I said that correctly, that's going to be November 20th from 10 a.m. It's the start time for that mass giveaway until 11:30 a.m. we're projecting, or until the masks are gone. Also on this Friday in District 11, we're going to have at Crossroads Community Center from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. a mask giveaway event. And again, that will be until the masks are gone, or from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So again, for members who are listening to this call, citizens who are interested in masks, we are having a giveaway this Friday in District 10 at Temple of Faith Bible Way Church from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And then also in District 11 at the Crossroads Community Center from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So those are mass giveaways that are scheduled for this Friday. We also have in District 10 at Mount Moriah Baptist Church scheduled for December 4th, a mass giveaway event as listed in your packet. And also we have another event scheduled in District 11 at the Richland County Sheriff's Region 1 substation on December the 11th. So we'll be announcing those again and putting out more public information about those upcoming ones, but we have some scheduled for this Friday. In section 3 of my report, I titled it Preparation and Consideration for Limited In-Person Services. I want to draw the council's attention to this particular section as it addresses some questions that I have received about what the county is doing in relationship to potentially offering in-person services. Before I get to that particular section, I do want to respond to a question that I received at the last meeting related to the number of employees that are working and how they are working at Richland County. So specific to the county administrator's employees, 85 to 87% are working on site primarily. Again, that's 85 to 87% of employees that report to the county administrator are reporting to work on site as their primary means of work. 13 to 15% are primarily teleworking. Again, that's 13 to 15% are primary teleworking. and 2% are working either an alternative work schedule or a flex schedule. And so the reason why you have that 2% is because you have employees who are working primarily from the office, but then also they may be working from home on certain days of the week as a part of their staggered scheduling or part of their flex scheduling. But the primary employees working for the county administrator are working on site. So as we go to section 3, preparation and consideration for limited in-person services, there have been a couple of modifications that have been made in response to Richland County's response to COVID-19. So we have safety protocols that we've addressed, cleaning protocols. We've addressed building access protocols, workplace protocols. And I anticipate that with more information that we get from the CDC and DHEC, there may be other times where we have to make changes based on new information. But all these things that we're doing are to address the public health recommendations that we have received from CDC and SCDHEC. One of the considerations that I put into your packet that we're going to utilize to determine how we are able to open is the CDC resuming business toolkit. We're utilizing that as part of our assessment as to our readiness to allow in-person services on some level. In addition to that, we have acquired appointment software, which we believe is a tool that would allow us to have in-person services on some level. We've acquired additional contract cleaning services. We have face masks that we purchased both for our employment staff, as well as maybe if we have folks who are coming to the county who don't have a face mask, but they may be trying to enter to the facilities. We're going to have some face masks available. We have also face shields. We have employees who are not able to wear face masks due to health conditions. So we have face shields, both the kind that come from the head down and some that come from the neck up. So we have both those types of face shields that we would have for our employees' safety. We also have handheld infrared thermometers. We also have self-temperature screening stations that require nothing but an individual to stand in front of the screen and have their temperature read by the device. And then we also have safety messaging placed throughout the county's facilities. We provided supervisor training to our staff, and we will continue to provide training as necessary to impact the slow spread of COVID-19. And last but not least, I want to say that we have also through our HR department offered mental wellness sessions. So all these things we've been trying to do in response to COVID-19 and to prepare for some level of citizens returning to some in-person services to Richland County. And some people may ask why, Mr. Administrator, do you believe it is necessary to have some level of in-person services? We learned throughout COVID-19 in conversations with various individuals, whether it was the school system or parents of school kids, that not all residents have ready access to technology. So we recognize that not all residents may be able to utilize online services as quickly as those who have ready access to technology. So we believe on some level, we do need to offer in-person services. I listed in my packet for you to see that my goal as a county administrator is to begin to offer some limited in-person services as early as 2021. And the reason why I said 2021 and not November or December is because I believe that people will be, in fact, gathering for the holidays. I don't have any data to back that up, but I'm concerned that if we open any time before then, that we potentially risk unnecessarily potentially exposing ourselves to COVID-19 spikes that we could otherwise defer if we just hold off until after the holiday season. That's pretty much what I have for my report. I certainly will take any questions now, Mr. Chair, that you or members of council may have. But if you look in your packet also, you will see that I did place in there some guidance just about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. That guidance is provided by CDC and speaks to things that people should consider as they prepare for, if they plan on having some level of Thanksgiving gatherings for their families. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair. The additional considerations that I have listed are just for updates for you. I think that that you all are aware of the Prisma relationship. They're using a Sears facility. They want to continue to use that. So we're working with them to allow them to use that facility. And then voter registrations and elections, we believe that we had a successful collaboration with them in helping them throughout this past election cycle. And I believe we heard some good feedback from the board and the director, and we had heard very limited issues. So I think that was potentially considered a positive as compared to what I had heard prior to this last election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions in reference to Mr. Brown's report?
Mr. Chair, just a comment.
Right, you recognize.
Just want to say, Mr. Brown, I know you're aware of this. I don't know if all of my colleagues are aware of this, but thanks to the county's infrastructure project in District 10, if you drive through that 40-mile stretch, you'll see orange cable going into the ground, and that is fiber optic cable. So by this time, certainly next year, we will be saying that fewer people in Richland County don't have access to the internet than they do today. So that'll be 50 new miles of cable with true broadband access. Just wanted to put that out there as a good news story. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Newton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brown, to the extent that you're able to comment when you look at all of the additional safety precautions that we're taking, the additional people who are teleworking and the costs associated with that, is there any additional information that you can give us in terms of CARES funding or other funding related to offsetting some of these costs versus what we are absorbing as part of our budget?
Yes, ma'am. So we do have some good news that we received recently related to the funding that request that we submitted to the state through the CARES Act program. They have so far communicated that the amounts that we had submitted for reimbursement, that they had approved those amounts. Again, those are related to funds that we did expend, that they have said that we would get back. Once we receive those funds, it was my intent to specifically tell you that we have received those funds. They're in the county's coffers and give you the exact amounts. But so far, we have been fortunate to at least receive reimbursements for the funds that we have spent related to, purchases specific to COVID-19 or employee work schedules specifically related to COVID-19.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. But I will report out with, again, when we have those exact numbers within the county's receipt.
Ms. McBride, you recognize. Ms. McBride, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Mr.
You
Brown,
recognize.
Yes, ma'am.
the numbers that you gave us regarding the percentage of employees that are working on site and those that are working at home,
Yes, ma'am.
does that include all county offices, or was that just for our administrative office, or what does that?
Good question. That is, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. That is for the county administrators, specific information. I don't have the details of the other elected officials and appointed officials. I can certainly work to get that information. I do know many of them are working very similar to what we're doing. And so, but I can't get the details of that if you would like for that specific information.
No, that's okay. So they're working sort of independent of us in terms of what they're doing.
I would say yes. So the short answer is yes. I don't set the schedule for those elected officials or appointed officials. And some of them have other entities, like, for example, if I can just do a quick example here, the court system. So in the court system, individuals that work in that system, the chief justice of the court system may send out information as to how the court system is operating. That would be just an example of, in some respects, yes, ma'am, they operate independently of what the county administrators staff operate.
Okay, and those that have boards like Parks and Recreation, and the library and all, they work independent of us.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. They respond specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the administrator reference the coronavirus update? If not, we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, which is the report of the interim clerk of council.
The office doesn't have a report.
Oh, thank you. Next is report of the chair. The chair does not have a report. That brings us to the approval of consent items on your agenda. Item 13A is 20-021 MA. Erica Sermon, that's RM to MD to HM, and that's located at 8534 Old Percival Road. And the second consent item is item 13B. David R. Brock, M1, RM-M1, and that's at 1804 Shop Road. I read them both just in case you want to take them both together. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval for the two consent items.
I second.
The motion is moved proper second for two consent items read. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair? Yes, sir. I have a question on one of those items, so I'd move for substitute motion for division.
Okay, which one do you have?
The first one, item A.
Okay. We'll hold item A. We'll entertain the motion for item, accept the motion for item B that was made. Any further discussion reference to item B, and then we'll come back to A. No, Ms. Owner, can you call the roll for the motion for item 13B?
Sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us back to item 13A. Ms. Myers, you pulled that when you recognize.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just a brief question. I asked that the staff provide information as to the ownership to be sure that it was not connected to that over 150 trailer park demolition that we did, that there was no common ownership. So I just wanted an answer on that before we vote.
The staff hear that? Do we have an answer?
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton Voynier, Community Planning and Development Director.
Ms. Moore, you recognize, yes. Okay.
Ms. Myers, to answer your question, no, there is no relationship.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Mr. Chair, I have nothing further. I'm in favor of this item.
Okay, if not, there's a motion. I entertain a motion for item 13A.
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
It's a move for approval.
Second.
Properly second. In discussion 13A, if there none, Ms. Hunt, can you call the roll for item 13A?
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 14, which is our second reading items. 14A, authorize execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes agreement between Richland County, South Carolina, project offer to provide for payment of fee in lieu of taxes and other matters related. Entertain a motion for second reading of item 14A. Entertain a motion for item 14A.
I move for approval.
Motion for approval for item 14A, is there a second?
Second.
It's moving properly second. Any discussion reference to item 14A? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owner to call the roll for item 14A.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 14B, authorize execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes and infrastructure credit agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Project Yeti to provide for payment of fee in lieu of taxes, authorizing certain infrastructure credits and other related matters. Entertain a motion for item 14B.
Move for approval.
I move for
Second.
approval and properly second. Any discussion of item 14B? There being none, then I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for the motion for item 14B.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 14C, authorizing expansion of the boundaries of I-77 Corridor Regional Industrial Park, jointly developed by Fairfield County to include certain properties related, located in Richland County, the execution and delivery of an infrastructure credit agreement to provide for infrastructure credits for Gable Oaks Housing Associates, LP, and other related matters. Chair, entertain a motion. For item, yes,
I move for approval.
motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Moving properly second. Any discussion reference to item 14C?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Brad, you recognize.
I'm just going to reiterate that I'm moving for approval based on my conversation with the president of Gable Oaks Association, the residents living there, my conversation with city council persons that represent this area, and my briefing from our lawyers in our Economic Development Committee. I think that you might want to explain regarding the regional industrial park.
Yes, anytime we're doing a tax fee in lieu of credit, the industrial park will be attached to it. That's why you would read all of those in all of the economic development items, like the previous two items, A and B. So that'll be clear for citizens. Thank you, Mr. McBride. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for item 14C.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That brings us to item 15, I'm sorry, D, 14D. That is approving the transfer of certain real property located in Richland County, the grant of certain options and other matters related thereof. The chair entertain a motion for item D.
Move for approval.
And motion move for
Second.
approval and proper second. That was a recommendation came as a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee. Any discussion, questions? If not, I'll ask is on call the roll for item 14D.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings to item 15, report of Economic Development Committee. That's Livingston. Item 15A, committee to negotiate a fee in lieu of ad valorem tax agreement between Richland County and Project Cross, identifying the project and other matters related thereof. The committee's recommendation was for approval. Mr. Malinowski, you recognized. For
Thank you.
discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not get the chance to speak with Director Rubel, so I will be voting no on the next two items, and I'll get with him before second reading. Thank you.
Okay, and remember, an item A is just committing to negotiate, so it has to come back to us. It's just committed to negotiate fee in lieu of tax. Just want to make that point clear. So we're not approving to move forward with it. You heard the committee's recommendation. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Zonley, can you call the roll for the committee's recommendation for approval?
Malinowski,
No.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
yes,
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to 15B, authorize the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes and incentive agreement binding between Richland County, South Carolina, and Project Cross to provide for payment of fee in lieu of taxes, authorizing certain infrastructure credits and other related matters. Again, that's related to the previous item. Committee's recommendation was for approval. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for the committee's recommendation for item 15B.
Malinowski,
No.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
yes,
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 16, report of the Rules and Appointments Committee. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After interviews for individuals who made application for the Airport Commission, there were 4 applicants and 2 vacancies. Both vacancies were for the at-large position. The committee recommends to reappoint number 4, John Parrish, and appoint number 3, Prentice McLaurin.
You've heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. Malinowski, do you know how long Mr. Parrish has served?
Yes, ma'am. He served 1 term, which would be 4 years. This is his 2nd term.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Malinowski, do we have term limitations on any other committees?
We do on some committees. I don't know which ones. We can have Ms. Only get that info to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any
It's
further?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm still.
I'm sorry, Ms. McBride. If you're not through, you still have the floor.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Ms. Only would provide the terms for the board appointments we have and committee appointments. Whether they can be, how many terms they can serve. And
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
we're doing right now doing an analysis of that, Mr. Malinowski, doing a review.
We're not doing a review of it. If you'd like to have that done, I guess it could be sent to the committee.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was a part of the ordinance review. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions?
Ms. McBride, for clarification, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Ms. McBride, not all of the committees, commissions, and boards come under a specific ordinance as such. Some of them have state laws that direct them.
Yes, it was my understanding that we were looking at the entire committee program assignment
I'm not
as
aware.
part of that review.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. That's not a motion that's been sent to the Rules Committee anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? If not,
Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Newton, sorry.
Yeah, very quickly, I can't answer the question about all of our boards and commissions, but my current understanding is that for the Airport Commission that they are limited to 2 terms. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussions, clarifications? If not, I'm going to ask Ms. Alderman to call the roll for the committee's recommendation for regarding appointments to the Airport Commission. Prentice, McLaurin, and John Parrish, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. Only, call the roll.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers, Newton. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Miss
That brings
Only,
us,
pardon me, Mr. Chair. I got some audio feedback while the vote was being called, so I didn't get a chance to record my vote, which is yes.
okay, did you
Thank
get
you.
that, Ms. Only?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. That brings us to item 17, report of the Renaissance Ad Hoc Committee. Ms. Newton.
I think it's Ms. Dickerson.
I apologize, Ms. Dickerson.
That's okay. I'm not wearing red tonight, but anyhow, thank you so very much. On November the 12th, the committee met, and it was determined we did have a quorum. They elected me chair for the next couple of meetings. And so the first item on the agenda was to move to direct staff by the way of the administrator to continue development of the proposal beauty of the old antique mall site and expansion of the Broad River Road corridor facade grant program. The beautification offers intent to be intermediary reports such as time as the highest base to determine the community's engagement in Park of the Richland County Renaissance. The staff should also work in concert with the Sheriff Department to address the county's administrators to provide comprehensive proposal for the consideration for council's consideration. However, the committee decided to I preferenced my remarks by saying they wanted to do a beautification using approximately, I think it's about $90,000, but based on the fact that this is a proposal that may have to have the facility for the magistrate's office, I just think that it wouldn't be advisable at this time to use those funds, but that we should move to consider the Broad River Road Antique Mall and plans for the capital improvement plans project funds set aside in the 2021 budget for the magistrate's office and allow the magistrate to work with staff to determine whether that mall will be considered a priority. And that would be the motion to carry forward from the committee. Judge Edmond did call me today because he didn't have all of the information he thought he had to give tonight. Wanted to defer, but since we're going to send this to staff, I think we can move forward with it. So the committee's recommendation is to move forward, let this be aside in the 2021 budget, and that was the motion of the committee.
Okay, any questions, clarification? Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dickerson, looking at the capital improvement budget that includes funds for the magistrate's office, one of the things that the magistrate's office was going to do was to come back and rank all of their priorities and plans for their offices. Would you, I know this is coming from the committee, but it was originally your motion, accept a friendly amendment that when they come back with their plan, that they also list what all of their priorities are for magistrate's offices for the capital improvement plan?
Absolutely, Ms. Newton, that would be very much acceptable, Ms. Newton, and I would definitely accept that friendly amendment, because that, I think that's where they were going with that. I think that's why he didn't have all of his information tonight. So that would be a friendly amendment that I believe the committee will accept. Thank you.
Any, Ms. Newton, you finished? Ms. Malinowski?
I am done unless I need to, restate anything just for protocol's sake. But yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Malinowski, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, Ms. Dickerson, the recommendation is for that in the capital improvement budget, there are funds already set aside for the magistrate's purposes of doing what he needs to do to improve his office space. So your motion is to, utilizing those funds, let the magistrate come forward to us with whether or not this building would be one of their priorities. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Mr. Manning.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Malinowski. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion after that motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walker, you recognize.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind me addressing you directly, Ms. Dickerson, as chair of the committee, it's my understanding both the magistrate and the sheriff are seeking to have this item deferred. Is there anything that would keep us from deferring it one subsequent meeting to make sure that they are able to bring forward all the information that they're apparently trying to bring to us before we provide any direction to staff?
I think, Mr. Walker, we have gone through several documents with the sheriff department as well as the magistrate's office. So if we can move forward, I would think it would be okay for the magistrate at that time when it comes up that he can make that decision. But I think we need to go forward with this particular one tonight to make sure that it be one of the ones that they consider. I'm not saying they're going to accept it, but the fact that they can consider, it will be on the list to be considered because they've determined that it is a priority.
Okay, understood and appreciate the clarification there, but also given that the sheriff's department is the intended user, would it be appropriate to hear from the representative from the sheriff's department as to their concerns over this motion and whether or not we need to move forward expediently or whether deferral would better suit their purposes?
I think we can move forward with it because I think the sheriff, Chief Cowan and Judge Edmonds have been working in concert with this particular item.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Could I hear from Chief Cowan as to the directive of the sheriff, the intent of the sheriff as it pertains to this particular property?
I know the magistrate's not here, and this is under the in the capital improvement project budget. I think it's under the magistrate of funding there, and that person, and I think he said he could not be here. So I don't know whether if someone from the sheriff I want to speak to it, I mean you can.
Mr. Chair, I would draw the request to hear from the sheriff.
Livingston.
Yeah,
Mr. Livingston.
I think I have the floor.
So that was withdrawn. Who did you recognize? Who's that?
Mr. Livingston.
Yes.
Are you talking about the magistrate office off of North Main?
No, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about it. We mainly just talking about the process we're going through now for the new funding for the other locations.
Okay, that's fine. My phone messed up for a few moments, and then when I came back, I heard that.
No, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terracio.
I noticed Chief Cowan is on the line. He also, there is a letter in our package that they both signed in concert. So if he wants to address this, Mr. Livingston, you might ask him.
No, I asked Mr. Terracio, and then I'll come back and see if Cal can say anything to this. Mr. Ratio. But since Mr. Walker withdrew what he was saying, that's why I just went on. Mr. Ratio, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Walker, you're finished with your remarks. Is that right?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Terracio.
Okay, thanks. So my question is about this amount of money that's listed, the 6.9 million. Is that the estimated amount for just the, is that the total move amount and renovating and everything? Or is that, what does that number represent?
What was your question? Which number are you referring to, Ms. Terracio?
The 6.9 million, an estimated 6.9 million, dependent on finial design and scope of work. Is that for moving everybody over there and doing the renovations that would be needed? Is that, what does that number represent is the question.
Is Mr. Brown here, or Mr. Dr. Thompson?
Hold on, Mrs.
Because that's the capital improvement budget.
Hold on, Mrs. Dickerson. Mr. Ratio, I'm not
Yes.
sure what the number you're referring to.
So I'm looking at the agenda briefing on page 199. Of our packet. It's right under fiduciary, our funds allocated. If no, is it a budget amendment necessary? And then right under that is a sentence that says an estimated 6,900,000.
No, that's not related to the item that we're talking about now.
Okay, so we are not talking about the Dutch Fork Magistrate's Office and our CSD Region 4 office.
Mainly talking about the capital funds that's in the budget. But I'll let staff, anybody else want to respond to it too, though.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I believe it would be appropriate for Chief Cowan and the Chief Magistrate to address this, but I know the Chief Magistrate is not here. The $6.9 million that's referenced in the agenda briefing as provided by the Chief Magistrate's office, the specific item is referencing the Dutch Fork Magistrate Facility in the Region 4 office. And so I'm not sure, Councilmember Terracio, as to the specifics of those amounts. That was something that was provided. So that would have to come from a conversation that would need to be led by the Chief Magistrate and possibly Chief Cowan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And may I add one other thing to this? This is this item is before us is because it's like about a 3 or 4 year item that we've been discussing before the Dutch Fork area. It's not a district, it's in the Dutch Fork, it's the Dutch Fork magistrates that we're looking at. And if the Chief Magistrate and Chief Cowan decided during the time when they're going through it, they may not decide that this may be the one that they want to prioritize, but I would like to move forward to make sure that it is one that will be considered for the Dutch Fork area. Thank you.
Mr. Malinowski. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where Ms. Terracio was talking about on that page 199 under fiduciary, I think we need some check marks in those boxes, yes or no. And if it is a capital improvement project, then that should have been stated possibly in this particular chart eliminated. So let's get accurate information when it comes back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms.
Chair.
Mr. Walker, you recognize.
Mr. Chair, multiple people have commented that they think it would be prudent to hear from both the chief and the magistrate. Given that we have the chief,
I'm fine.
I would put my question back on.
Thanks for that, Mr. Walker. Mr. Cowan, someone here representing the sheriff's office could speak, and I think the chief magistrate said he couldn't be here. Mr. Cowan, do you want to speak to this?
I'm happy to answer any questions that come up. I think in fairness to the chief magistrate, he has a lot of information that needs to be presented that we've been compiling, and it's not ready to be presented. And I think the biggest thing was, number one, what are the priorities for the magistrate's office, and co-locating with the sheriff's department was the first thing. Second thing was identifying the costs, and the third thing was identifying where the locations would be. And I think the magistrate, I talked to him earlier today, and he had something come up he wasn't able to be on. I think there's a lot of information he has to present that is really important for you all to be able to make a fair and conscientious decision. As far as the Dutch Fork Magistrate's office is concerned, anything but demolishing that antique mall is not going to do anything for the community. So the position that we've all had was that's the first step that needs to take place in that area, is to tear that building down. And that is the location where the magistrate wants the Dutch Fork Magistrate and the Sheriff's Department. But there's so many other unanswered questions that we don't have for you tonight, that we can't give you tonight because we haven't answered them yet.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Dickinson.
You know what? I tell you what. I'll just I'll defer the item and whatever. Just defer it. Because I don't want to see $90,000 put into that building to put some kind of painting or something like that on it. That is in the heart of this Broad River Road community, and it is in the heart of where there's a lot of crime. And if we don't, even if the magistrate decided that this is not his priority, that he might want to put his magistrate's office in Pontiac or in Dutch, wherever. But the fact of the matter is that this was one, that the reason this antique mall was purchased in the first place, that was brought in for purchase, was to address that dilapidated old magistrate's office that's down in a hole, that is not ADA accessible. It is awful. And that was the reason. So if you want to defer it, I'll make a motion to defer. And
so you withdraw your original motion and make a motion to defer?
I'll withdraw the motion from the consideration from the committee. I will withdraw.
Okay. So the motion on the floor now is deferral.
Yeah.
Motion for deferral. Is there a second for the motion for deferral?
Second that.
It's moving properly second for deferral. Since that's non-debatable, Mrs. Only can you call the roll for the motion for deferral for item 17A?
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
No.
I didn't hear Ms. Dickinson.
No.
McBride,
No.
Livingston,
Oh, no.
Terracio,
No.
Yes.
Kennedy,
No.
Manning,
No.
Myers, Newton.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, I received a message that Councilwoman Myers is tending to a sick child, which is why she got off the meeting. So I just wanted to make it known why she wasn't here.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Mr. Chair, since the motion to defer was denied, you should be back to the original motion to forward it to staff and allow staff to work with the chief magistrate and the sheriff department to come up with a priority for the capital improvement plan for the magistrate's office.
Right. Yeah. Now, we're just simply saying they do what they need to do and just consider that, but we're not asking them to do anything. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so that motion is on the floor. Ms. Dickinson, you removed it. It's going to need a second.
Second.
Moving proper second. Any further discussion? If not,
Mr.
I'll
Chair?
ask. Yes, Ms. Newton.
Really quickly, because I don't want to belabor this, what I heard Chief Cowan say is that the sheriff's office and the magistrate wanted to come back with full information to present their recommendations about how they want it to move forward. The way that I understand the motion that is on the floor is requesting staff to do exactly that, to come back with their priorities and their recommendations and information. So it seems to me that the motion that's on the floor is actually in concert with what both Judge Edmonds and the Sheriff's Department is asking for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I certainly agree with that. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll for the motion for item.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
No.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Manning,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item will be item, let me make sure I get to my right page, will be item 17B, and that was the item would be to move Richland County building to a new court. I move that Richland County build a new courthouse, and that motion was from Mr. Manning, and the committee's recommendation was that that we move that this item I move that Richland County build a new courthouse. This Mr. Manning stated that this was an item that council worked on for 10 years, and that we would move forward toward working toward items to address a new courthouse. And that was, I believe it was, yeah. Mhm. That was the recommendation for from the committee, Mr. Chair.
And that was for the county to move forward to
Was the county to look forward to building a new courthouse? Because that is a priority. This has been under discussion for the past 10 years, that we need to move forward with that.
You've heard that recommendation from the committee discussion. Ms. Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my recollection is that quite a while ago, we used to have a courthouse ad hoc committee. Whatever happened to that, and why wouldn't this be handled through that same committee?
Mr. Malinowski, Mr. Chair, before you answer that, I would like to address Mr. Malinowski's question.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Malinowski, there was, in fact, a courthouse committee that was it was canceled. We canceled that committee some time ago. However, this courthouse is still remain to be property. It's something that we need to move forward with. But that committee was I think we deferred that committee, and it was just taken away. We didn't go forward with that committee. It was canceled. So now the courthouse is in dire straits, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And so therefore, the committee addressed and said, this is something we need to continue to look forward to, how we address building and going forward with a new courthouse that is in dire straits at this particular point in time. So the committee's recommendation was to move forward to look at ways to address a new courthouse.
Okay, you heard that, to look at ways to address the new courthouse. That's the committee's recommendation. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, do I still have the floor then?
You do.
So you do if you're not finished. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Ms. Dickerson, for that clarification. But I also thought that part of the courthouse building, as you stated, I thought it was put into the Renaissance program. Where are the results or updates as to where we are from when that was being discussed under the Renaissance? Seems like there should be some additional information here. Or is that that's already been done previously? And that this motion is just kind of a rehash of what the county was already looking into.
And they need to continue to move forward and look at how we can proceed on getting a new courthouse.
Then why wasn't this, if this is something that was already in a committee and being discussed, it should have been brought back through the committee, or if it was tabled in the committee, brought back by 3 members, but not just a new motion. That's my question. Why do we have a new motion for something that's already being or was being discussed in an already existing committee?
Well, Mr. Mallon, just clarification, that committee no longer exists, the courthouse committee.
I understand that. But I also thought that the courthouse was being discussed under the Renaissance program when the Renaissance program was up and running. So if it was already there and being discussed, why does a new motion have to get it kickstarted, so to speak? Why isn't it being brought forward with the information that we already have worked on and have, rather than just a one line, build a new courthouse?
Mr.
Malinowski has the floor. Malinowski.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Mr. Malinowski, Mr. Manning felt this was Mr. Manning's motion. It was brought and put on this committee because it was sent to this committee. We addressed it. This is what we came up with, that we need to move forward to look at how we need to proceed with building a new courthouse. I understand that it was a part of the Renaissance, but that courthouse is sitting up there deteriorating, and it is terrible. So we need to really look at it. We're looking at a lot of other things like EMS, 9/11. Those also were part of that. But we found that there are needs of it. So at this particular point in time, we need to look at it, address it, let staff look at it. And if there's any further, thoughts regarding this, or we need to do some further research on it, whatever we need to do, we need to start moving forward on how we can start the addressing to build a new courthouse that we need.
Mr. Chair.
I have Ms. Newton and Mr. Walker.
I'll wait, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So given the fact that this motion has been routed through the Renaissance Committee implies that it is in fact part of the Renaissance program, the holistic Renaissance program. If it's not, then in fact, I would argue this motion is not properly before us, being presented by the Renaissance Committee. But my question is this: a no vote to this unilateral motion that extracts one component of the Renaissance program and puts it before us would not necessarily halt the progress and consideration being made as it pertains to the courthouse within the Renaissance program. Is that a correct statement?
If you're asking me the question, I'm not clear on the question at this point.
The question is this: we have a Renaissance program that was supposed to encompass part of it was the courthouse, the relocation, the reuse, etc. A no vote against this particular motion, in my opinion, and I'm asking it as a question, should not impede the progress being made within the Renaissance program itself as it pertains to the courthouse. Is that a correct assumption?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Ms. Newton,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I wasn't here as part of the original process for the courthouse, so I'm personally a little bit unclear on what that whole process would even look like when it comes to the courthouse. The recommendation that I made at the committee that I would also make here is that we direct staff to look at the Renaissance program or the previous items that were included in it comprehensively, so that we can see, where does the courthouse fit in? Where do the other elements fit in? So that we know that we have the budget, the time, the manpower, the correct plans. And so my recommendation is that we take this comprehensively, which we could do either by potentially deferring this motion. There happens to be a motion that is going to be before us on Thursday at the DNS committee to do exactly that. But I do think that the courthouse is important, as are all the other elements that we're trying to plan for, and that I think it would be better for the county if we address those comprehensively and at least said, these are the priorities that we're going to tackle. This is how they fit together, and this is how we're going to pay for it.
Thank you.
Is that your motion, Ms. Newton?
Ms. Newton, are you making a
Sure.
motion? All right.
Second.
Okay.
Probably moved in, Mr. Chair, you can say carry that was probably moved in second.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Could you restate the motion for me? I'm sorry. I didn't realize it would be a motion when you were saying it. So
I'm not sure that I can, but just as a matter of discussion for the council, I can make a substitute motion that we come back with this comprehensive plan. At the same time, a very similar motion is going to be before us at DNS on Thursday. So which I'm happy to do whichever would be more appropriate. So
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
let me hold on a minute. Ms. McBride had her hand up for a while. So when Ms. Newton is finished, it's McBride, and then I'll come to Ms. Myers.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Newton.
I consider myself finished at present.
Okay, Ms. McBride.
Mr. Chair, as stated in the committee, it's somewhat of a misnomer in terms of the Renaissance Committee, because we deferred it and then we brought back up the Renaissance. But at the time that this motion was to revisit the Renaissance Committee, there are several different components to the Renaissance Committee. And I think that we are addressing the administrative component now, and that I do agree that there is some confusion, particularly for those that are new, and even for some of us that were on here when the Renaissance was first organized, that to start all over would have wasted a lot of time. But more so than that is that there are certain components that need to be moved on immediately, and they should be vetted, maybe some more, but we should not get the whole 3 different levels of Renaissance together, because that could take a long time. We could separate the different components, and I think Ms. Myers and I think she mentioned something about this before, that each one of them is very comprehensive. So right now we're working on the administrative component of the Renaissance plan. There's another separate component, even though it was a part of the Renaissance, but the courthouse. So to just lump all of it back together for a comprehensive plan would be too much and would not be really the intent of what happened when it was deferred in the beginning. So I recommend, I would offer a substitute motion on this particular item that we're voting on for the courthouse, that part be reviewed again by staff and come with staff coming up with our recommendations for county to look at, and that it remain in committee.
Did you Miss McBride, am I understanding you to ask that this remain in the Renaissance Committee?
Yes, and for this to be reviewed for staff to get all the different information that we need for the comprehensive plan for the courthouse.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Pardon me, is that your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I can second that motion if that's agreeable with the chair.
Yeah, if that's a motion, then second, do I have a motion on the floor, Ms. Owen?
Well, I had to offer a substitute motion. I think Ms. Newton, did you have a motion on the floor?
Ms. Owen, do I have a motion on the floor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you did. Ms. Newton offered a substitute motion to the committee recommendation.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Myers. I just wanted to make sure Ms. Owen said it for the record.
Can I still raise my point of order though, which actually
Oh,
should have
yeah,
come prior?
I didn't realize I had a point of order, but you certainly do that, yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Just want to say briefly, I would be really concerned with putting this back in committee or remanding it anywhere else, just because this council voted literally a year ago, literally, to ask the staff to bring us a comprehensive Renaissance plan. That's why Mr. Manning has pulled this out, because we've been waiting for that for a year. And so I'd be a little bit nervous to send all of this stuff back and say, please bring us back your comprehensive plan. I agree with Ms. McBride. It would be lovely if we had that plan and had that information. But at this point, we have buildings falling down, and I think that we need to move forward. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, could I follow up?
Yes, you didn't have to ratio and need.
Okay. Ms. Myers, maybe I didn't articulate it as well as you, but that's what we already have a plan in place, right? Supposedly.
Are you directing that at me?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, may I answer?
Yes, since she's directing the question.
Okay, I don't understand. Thank you, sir. I don't understand that we do. That was the point of the motion that I put in that will come up at, I don't know why at DNS, but it will come up at DNS on Thursday. That was the point of the motion, because there was no visibility as to what was happening with Renaissance. And we kept asking, and I had no idea. So that was the point of my request, to have a comprehensive analysis and a third party to take it over so that we could get moving on it. But I'm happy to put it in pieces this way, just so that we continue to protect the county and its investments.
Okay, because we did have a plan for the courthouse. That's what we're speaking on right now. The plan we started the plan. Actually, we hired, I don't know how many consultants for the courthouse.
Right, we have the initial beginnings of a plan. Yes, ma'am.
That's right. So my motion was to deal with what we have and to complete that for the courthouse part of it. And that's why I was saying that if it stayed in committee, because the staff would have to work on completing that plan and getting the consultants or whoever they need, which is similar to your motion, but it has to be done at the committee level. I need to hear Ms. Newton. First of all,
hold on, Ms. Dickerson.
Get some clarification where we are, because I'm not sure at this point.
All right, I'm gonna try to do that. I'm gonna let Ms. Terracio go and then Ms. Newton, and then I'll try to clarify where we are.
Thank you. While I remain slightly unclear as to the motion on the floor, or the substitute motion, or the substitute to the substitute motion, I would like to offer a friendly amendment to whatever motion is around that. Our motion forward, regardless of what it is, include a rebranding of what has been known as the Renaissance. I think every time we say the word, it reinforces kind of an unknown tumbleweed of programs and projects. And I believe that we can do a lot of the things that we need to accomplish, but we do need to rebrand. So I would like to offer a friendly amendment that whatever we do moving forward include a rebranding.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have Newton and then Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just want to clarify that my intent is not that there's necessary, when I say a comprehensive plan, that it doesn't mean this is how we say we're going to do all these things together simultaneously, but we are talking about multiple priorities that have long processes to figure out how we're going to do them. There are cost implications, budget implications, and strategy implications. And I'm simply saying, let's identify, because a year has passed, we're now in a COVID environment, that we say, these are all of the items that we are considering moving forward with that used to be in this bucket. These are the ones that we're going to move forward with, and this is how we're going to prioritize with it. It's kind of like if you were looking and you knew you needed to buy a new car, a new house, and I have no idea you needed to pay tuition for college. You want to look at what all those things are comprehensively. You want to understand what it means for you and if you can afford it and how you want to move forward. So that's simply what I'm suggesting, as opposed to saying, let's have a courthouse here, let's have this center here, let's have this building there. I just want us to say, these are all the priorities we're looking at, and this is the one that we're going to move forward with. And if it's the courthouse, that's completely fine. I just would like for it to be understood what the full breadth of what we are working on is, particularly as I understand the previous visions for the courthouse, there were dependent variables about what did that mean for 2020, et cetera. So that is why that was my recommendation, not to slow it down, but rather to give us clarity so that then we could move forward where we needed to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just quickly, now, obviously, and I certainly agree with Ms. Teracio's concern, because I think that just the terminology hangs us up with Renaissance. And keep in mind too, since that started, remember, in some ways, county needs have changed too. What I would recommend we do is not so much worry about whether there's a Renaissance plan, what's in it, and so forth, but ask staff to review current county facility needs and county-owned properties and bring back a utilization plan for those facilities. Now, what I think is important, because we know there are certain things needed, we can say with that plan, it must include, DSS, for example, 911 public safety and courthouse. We can say the plan must include these things, but staff is going to prioritize these things. But some way to just kind of get us kind of restart. And part of that would be that motion that talks about getting consultants, someone to help. So whomever that person is, if the administration needs someone to serve as a consultant or a group or whatever, they could help us to make sure staff, develop that plan in terms of reviewing all of our facilities and properties, and come back and say, here's some ways to utilize them. But I think if there are council members who are convinced that, things like DSS and 911 and the courthouse are important things, we don't need to tell them what the priorities are, but we need to say that staff must include those in the overall plan, and so we can move on.
I just want to know, Mr. Chair, whether or not that will address the concern that we need to be moving forward with the idea that a new courthouse will be a part of the plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, but staff is going to prioritize those things. So we'll have a clear new update list of where we're going and why and prioritization.
Okay, so I'm still not clear on where we are going with the motion that the committee recommend versus there are two substitute motions on the floor. So we need to look at Ms. McBride's and also Ms. Newton. I think Ms. McBride was the last substitute motion. And then there was Ms. Newton's substitute motion. And then we have the committee's recommendations. So how do we follow through with this so that we can get this moving forward?
Well, that's what I'm getting to, and that's why I just simply threw that out because there are already those motions on the floor. And my intent was to make a motion before that made of the motion. Those motions got on the floor. Reference what I'm saying.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Ms. McBride and Malinowski.
I will withdraw my motion because with the clarity of Ms. Newton's that it's not, when she stated comprehensive plan, she was not talking about just taking a look at everything that we've done under Renaissance. Isn't that my understanding, and starting over with it? But there were major components that she wanted to look at together. So I will withdraw my motion for your motion if you're going to make one, and with the understanding that we need to look at DSS separately, as we have done with the 911 emergency management. unless we're going to put the 911, DSS, and all those back together. But I think that 911 and DSS are two separate components that are in dire need that we need to especially look at.
Well, first of all, I need, can Ms. Newton redo her substitute motion so that we can take a vote on it and see whether that passes?
Well, let Mr. Malinowski speak first and then.
But I withdrew mine.
Yeah, you withdrew yours.
Right.
What of Mr. Livingston's if he's making one?
No, that's.
Yeah, I plan to make one if there's room to make one, yes, but I want to hear from Mr. Malinowski. He's next.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McBride addressed my comments and concerns. I was hoping that you'd be able to make a motion to cover it just as you already had told us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My motion would be that I move that staff review the current county facility needs and county-owned properties and bring back a utilization plan for council's consideration. The plan must include something with look at DSS, 911 public safety area, and the courthouse. It's to include everything else. I'm just saying I don't want to leave those things out that we know are in urgent need or may need or we may want to consider.
Can you make that a priority? Those be a priority? Can you put the word priority in your motion?
Well, I want them to be included, but I want staff to do the total priority.
Well, I can't vote if you can't make them a priority.
I think these need to be a priority because I don't think this should be left to the discretion of staff. That's why we're here to make those decisions and let staff help us work through it.
All right, I'll change the word that they would be priorities.
Okay, then I'll second that motion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Second. So that becomes a substitute motion since the original motion was.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walker, you recognize.
Yeah, I would just suggest a friendly amendment that you make that motion pertinent to items 17B and C.
That's what we, Mr. Walker, I think.
17B and C.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's what we included, that, Mr. Walker.
Yes, Ms. Walker, it's pertinent to that. That's why I was trying to be inclusive in doing it that way. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I support your motion. I guess I just want to be clear. When you say utilization plan, to me, that means one thing versus the recommendations that you're making. So can you just specify what you mean by that?
In other words, when you review those facilities, what's the best utilization for those facilities?
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, that motion has been properly moved and seconded. Do you want to carry it?
Thank you, Ms. Ms. Malinowski, were you through?
No, Mr. I just had one more thing to comment on here when I'm hearing about making something a priority. How can you have total an independent study done, as you said when you first began to speak a while back, and you said the needs of the county may have changed. And I don't know that any of us know what those needs are, not being involved with them on a day-to-day basis as the administrator and his close staff are involved with. So it seems to me that if we want to do the best thing for the county, then I think staff does need to come up with a list as they feel, a prioritization list, because you can take and put 3 things in there and say, we want these to be a priority. And number 3 could actually come out to be number 6 in the pecking order. And there could be 2 other things in front of it once staff goes through and takes a look and comes back at it. So
Ms. Malinowski, that's what, and I hope staff would make note of that though.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if
I understand what you're saying.
If in fact,
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Malinowski.
Ms. Dickerson.
I'm sorry, but you know how I am. That's just me. I want to make.
But I want to hear Ms. Malinowski out though. Let's let him.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. I'm sorry, Mr. Malinowski. Go ahead.
I'll finish it up real quick here. It's just that if in fact these are true priorities in the county, they're going to come out on top. That's all. Thank you.
And remember, Ms. Malinowski, that's why I stated the way I did from the very beginning. I just wanted I just wanted to move on. And also too, those things been vetted quite a bit too, already.
Okay,
Thank you. Any further discussion about the motion?
go ahead.
If not, I'll ask Ms. Only to call for the vote for the substitute motion from Livingston.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Sorry, yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the report of the Renaissance Committee. Since we included both B and C, that concludes my report. Thank you very much. And thank all of you for the very good discussion on these items. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Item 18, other items. That's 18A, Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center detainee telephone service. Mr. Brown? I don't
Yes,
have a
sir.
name on that one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, that's no problem. I did have our procurement officer on the line, Ms. Jennifer Ladishkin. There were some questions and answers that came out of the discussion related to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. Committee members had addressed some concerns about how they wanted to see the next contract lined up with foregoing certain funding that the council was receiving from the contract. In hearing those questions, the procurement manager wanted to make sure that we share some information with you before you take any action on this item, just so you will have a full briefing of what your potential decisions will entail. So if I could, Mr. Chair, I want to ask Mr. Ladishkin to address our understanding of some of the questions that were raised by committee members and respond to you all so that you can have better information as you seek to make a decision about the contract for the detainee telephone and video visitation services. Mr. Ladishkin?
Thank you very much. I think that'd be helpful.
Good evening, members of council. Jennifer Ladishkin, procurement manager. I wanted to bring to your attention that during the RFP process for the inmate telephone system, one of the evaluation factors outlined in the RFP was the commission structure. And so the submittals were rated based on that commission structure that was provided, and the most favorable commission structure for the county would have received the most points. So in council's desire to eliminate that commission structure and move forward with charging the inmates the cost, in essence, that voids the commission rating in the RFP. And so what I would like to approach council with tonight is the suggestion that we go to all of these submittals and ask for their best and final offers based on council's desire for the cost structure for the inmates and eliminating the commission to the county. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because in that case, if you were to move forward in that direction, we would not be awarding a contract tonight or negotiating a contract tonight with the current highest ranked offerer.
And Mr. Chair, just on behalf of Ms. Ladishkin, we are aware that we are referring to those individuals in Alvin S. Glenn as detainees, as some of them may not have been
Thank you.
through their process at this point in time. So we understand that. So I'll just ask that you consider that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Ms. McBride, you recognize?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this did not go, this came straight to council, and we're on the detention committee, and we didn't get a chance to even see it unless I was in La La Land somewhere when it came through. I think that I've read over it, and I know everybody else here has, because there are a lot of other options we may want to look at in terms of the money that we're able to, that the county is getting as a result of the telephone usage. You know, we have a real problem with mental health and drug abuse, substance abuse in our facilities. And there may be some way that we could redirect some of the funds to address those issues. So the bottom line I'm thinking is that this needs to be, if this is not time sensitive, we really need to study this in detail to make sure that we are providing a prototype program for our detainees and making sure that we're using, we're getting the best results for this contract, best results for both for the detainees in terms of cost and for their mental stability right now, particularly given COVID-19, and that we lack adequate mental health and social services. So my recommendation, if this is not time sensitive, that we may need to look and study this a little bit more and include those individuals with expertise in the area.
Ms. Maldonado in Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McBride, you weren't in La La Land because this says here in the briefing, this came from the A&F committee, so it never did make it to the detention center committee. So I agree with Ms. McBride in that a lot of information needs to be obtained and provided and vetted. And if that's the case, then I think it should go to the detention center committee. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you brought up, that was the point I was going to make, is I thought this was discussed in committee, but it wasn't A&F. I wasn't sure what committee it was discussing, but I know it was discussing committee. Any further discussion on this? Now, did the A&F committee have a recommendation?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, so I do not want to misspeak, but it's my understanding that items that are moved by the committee go on the next soonest council agenda. And I believe we had discussed this at the last A&F committee meeting.
10 cents. Yes, sir. And that's.
So the question is, for me, is it too late? Can we defer this to the next council meeting, or is it time sensitive? I'm sorry.
Director Myers, if I may, Mr. Chair, ask Director Myers of the Evidence Glen Detention Center to address that question, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes, please.
No, it is not time sensitive whatsoever.
Now, the next committee, when is the next council meeting? But we don't want to just defer to defer, though. We need to know what it is that we need to address before it comes back and forth. Based on Ms. Ladicia's concern, how do we address that concern?
Mr. Chair, we couldn't refer it to the detention facility committee?
If that would be a preference if we have the time to do it, yes.
Since it's not time sensitive.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Mr. Chair, if that's Ms. McBride's motion for it to go to the detention committee, that would be fine because it has been vetted in the A&F and we came up with a minimum of 10 cents. And I think we had some concerns based on the amount of funds that the county would be getting as a result of the 10 cents. So I think that was a concern to charge the inmates that amount of money. So that's why this item is here. So I would second Ms. McBride's motion to send it to the detention center and let committee and let them vet it and see where they can come up.
Ms. McBride, was that a motion?
That was my motion because
okay, so it's been moved and properly second to forward this item to the detention center committee. Any further discussions regarding the motion?
I think we did a good job in the Finance Committee, Ms. Dickerson, but there are some other issues, program issues that we could tie maybe to this, and that's why I wanted both program and financial.
Well, that's why I second your motion, Ms. McBride.
Thank you. And I'm more concerned about Ms. Legitima's motion. I meant concern too, so that can be addressed in the committee. So it's moving properly second to forward this to the area. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm about to really mess it up now. The Detention Center Committee. Any further discussions? If not, I'll ask Ms. Only to carry the motion.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That brings to item 19 on our agenda, executive session. I don't think we have any executive session items. And also, Ms. Oh, I don't have any items for the motion here. Do you have some that I did not receive?
No, sir, I didn't receive any.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
That concludes item 20. On item 21 on adjournment, there was a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Been properly second. Mrs. Only, can you call the roll for adjournment?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Dickerson,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Terracio,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Kennedy, Manning, Myers,
Yes, ma'am.
Newton.
Yes.
Bye.